But now it's the turn of the people to finally cast their vote, or as one advisor to President Obama put it, to decide which side is bluffing. And whoever gets the job will have an in-tray in the Oval Office full to the brim, starting with the American economy, but also including key foreign policy challenges. Now, joining me here in the studio is Ellen Wassilina, a member of the Republicans abroad here in Paris. Ellen. Bob Vallier, a member of the Democrats abroad, also here in Paris. From New York, Leah Pizarre, a former advisor to President Bill Clinton. And from Washington, D.C., Tim Kaine, the chief economist at the Hudson Institute, a conservative-leaning think tank. But first, let's head now to Washington, D.C., where France 24's Laura Baines is standing by. Laura, this has been one hell of a roller coaster campaign. It's also been an incredibly bitter one, hasn't it?
That's the understatement of the century, and it has been one hell of a roller coaster. Just think back a few months to the summer. This really was President Obama's election to lose. He was really riding high in the polls. You remember when Mitt Romney was struggling to secure the nomination for the Republican Party? You remember shortly afterwards he went on that foreign policy tour, widely considered a bit of a ham-fisted job, when he told the British they wouldn't be able to hold the Olympics, and when he told people in the Middle East that the Palestinians were culturally inferior to the Israelis. I mean, this was the kind of thing that people thought Romney really didn't have a chance. And then the worst blow for him of all, caught on camera, apparently writing off 47% of the electorate, saying that they'd never vote for him anyway, and he couldn't convince them to take responsibility for themselves. Well, how things have changed. I mean, back then, you know, Barack Obama really rested on his laurels, but then came the Denver debate, that fateful meeting, that first live televised debate. It really looked like Barack Obama just didn't show up that night. Mitt Romney, on the other hand, was there with what he called a 5-point plan, and it tapped into what Americans consider the most important issue in this election: jobs, jobs, jobs. Mitt Romney saying, I'm a businessman, I'll get us out of this mess and I'll create jobs. And Barack Obama looked very defensive and looked pretty much like he didn't really want to be there at all. Since then, Annette, we've had two visions on the economy put out by these two candidates. Mitt Romney saying it's time for government to get out the way and let the entrepreneurs and the business people really get the economy going again. And Barack Obama saying, look, I've got the economy on the right track. I'm creating jobs. I saved the auto industry in those key Midwestern states. If you put Romney in charge now, all of that will be lost, and we'll be going back to the policies that got us here in the first place. And, you know, as you've been saying, it is a close race. $2 billion was spent on the presidential race alone. And what do you have it? A day before polling day, it's a tie. I'm sure a lot of Americans will be happy when this election is over.
That's Laura Baines in Washington, D.C., who's in for a long, long night, I suspect, Laura. Now let's head up to the up the East Coast towards the Boston Convention Centre, which has actually become Mitt Romney's headquarters. And joining us now from there is France 24's Philip Crowther. Philip, I imagine where you are, everybody is holding their breath. But given what's at stake, both sides have put in place lawyers in the swing states in anticipation of messy, inconclusive results, haven't they?
Yes, that is the nightmare scenario, that this thing will drag on and drag on past Election Day. Lawyers getting ready for both sides in those battleground states where it might be too close to call late into the night. One thing is for sure, we're in for a very, very long night here, and that's when the lawyers might well get ready in places like Ohio, like Florida again. Remember the year 2000, that will be on everybody's lips if we don't get a clear result tonight. Just take a look at the last email coming out from the Mitt Romney campaign. It's a get out and vote email, and he says this is a historically tight election. Now, if you hear those words, historically tight election, what does that mean? Even tighter than the year 2000? Well, that means this would potentially drag on. Remember, that one went all the way to the Supreme Court. Here's hoping we do get a result tonight, but the lawyers have already been out in force in the months and even the years before Election Day, with Democrats criticizing possible voter suppression in states like Pennsylvania. They got that sorted out for them. They got a win in the end, and Republicans complaining about potential voter fraud. These are things that might well come up again, only, of course, if this race is too close close to call in those crucial battleground states. Remember, it is too close to call still on a national level, but that is not necessarily, of course, what will count when it comes right to the end here on election day. It's the electoral college votes that will count, and those also currently looking very, very tight indeed, with slender leads for one of the two candidates in a handful of swing states, maybe up to 9. We'll have to see how many of them stay really, really tight late into the night.
Philip Crowther reporting there from Boston. Now I want to head across to New York and raise a question with Leah Pizarro. You were the former communications advisor to President Bill Clinton, and as we just heard from our correspondent Laura Baines there, certainly President Barack Obama was slammed for his rather lacklustre performance at that crucial first presidential debate. How much of an impact do you think it's having on the vote as people go and cast their ballots today?
I would say the debate where, yes, he was lackluster, but let's give the man a bit of a break, had an impact at the time. But I think today everyone has almost forgotten about those debates, and it was obliterated by two things: by Hurricane Sandy, which just took all the attention off the memory of that debate and really focused on a real and tangible situation where we had a very presidential President Obama, and of course on the two subsequent debates where he did much better.
Tim Kaine in Washington, given that the economy is struggling, we're certainly nowhere out of the woods at this point, even though there has been a few glimmers of hope in the recent months. One would have assumed that Mitt Romney would have had it in the bag by now, and it wouldn't have been, the fact is what we're seeing is still very much a nail-biting campaign, to the point that they're still in a dead heat on the day that people go and cast their vote.
Yeah, it seems like it's a dead heat. The polls show mixed messages. Some pollsters say it's a 90% chance that Obama will win, but those all depend on if the energy and the turnout are the same that they were when President Obama was first elected. And as you point out, with the economy this week, enthusiasm's really down on that side. And in fact, one poll shows that independent voters who care most about the economy are 22% in Romney's favor. So that's what they mean when they say it's all about turnout at this point. It's all about who shows up. And in fact, Sandy may in fact depress turnout in Pennsylvania, where the rainstorms were really severe. The bulk of Sandy hit. So, Pennsylvania is very much in play. And, I have one prediction. It'll be a landslide. I just don't know which way.
Bob, do you have any comment in regards to that?
Well, I don't think it'll be a landslide. I think it'll be very close. I think Obama finally will win the electoral vote and probably the popular vote. The national polls put things very, very close, neck and neck. But when you look at state polls, particularly in the battleground states, you see that there's a slight margin for Obama in 8 of the 9 major battleground states, which seems promising. You look at things on the local level, you get a much clearer picture of how local people are going to vote. And all politics finally is local. So I think just by looking at polls in Ohio, Virginia, Colorado, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania especially is not going to go to Romney.
But it does seem, though, that people are disenchanted with President Obama.
There is an enthusiasm gap with respect to 2008. That is absolutely certain. It's a very different
picture, what we see today, than what we saw back then.
Absolutely, and that's always the case, I think, with an incumbent. After 4 years, we're a little bit tired of the same old thing, and I think, there are some Democrats who, I think, people on the left who have been disappointed with Obama for various reasons, some of them good reasons, some of them I agree with. But overall, when you evaluate the whole package, Obama has done an absolutely fantastic job given the conditions he was handed upon assuming office. So people are tired, yes, there's an enthusiasm gap that has in part to do with a sort of Obama fatigue. I think more than that, it has to do with campaign fatigue. This has been going on since January.
It's a long campaign indeed. And one thing, Ellen, is that Mitt Romney is being pulled in many, many different directions. It seems like within the party there are factions, and whereas at one stage he would sort of disappoint another, he would, make another section of the party happy. I mean, it hasn't been easy for him, has it?
Hasn't, and given the state of the economy, go back to what Léa Pizarro just said, you know, coming into the debates as well, people didn't forget that very first poor performance. As you say, Mitt Romney came in, we had this long, you talk about long primary session, you know, that lasted months and months, and you talk about fatigue. I think everybody was a bit tired of it through the, you know, but, you know, he got through that, and he wasn't the favorite, he wasn't the chosen son, as we say, for that primary, so he did have to navigate, if you will, like I call a political party like a family. There's a little bit of everything in a family, and you try to please everybody. So a little bit of navigating, I would say he has a great ability to adapt himself to different situations. And of course, I have to come back to the economy. The numbers are not good. Yes, there are jobs created, but the unemployment rate has gone up. And you look and you talk to different economists, they are the jobs that were created today were not, you know, were created back in 1982. So we're not moving forward, and if I can just give you a couple of numbers just to underline what we're talking about. For example, if you look in California, which is a Democratic state, the unemployment in it is at 10%. Nevada, the very last, because I rated the, you know, the states in order, Nevada is the last state of the Union, or the United States, 11.8%. You talked about Pennsylvania, Bob. Unemployment is 8.2%. Florida, 8.7%. Et cetera, et cetera. Now let's look at the electorate and how the electorate is affected by the unemployment rate, which is overall national 7.9%. And Obama's electorate is clearly affected, and maybe that's why there's a little bit of fatigue there. If you look at the Afro-American unemployment, it stands at 14.3%. Hispanics are at 10%, and the young people, very important, 23.7%. So the situation is not, you know, as rosy as it would seem.
Léa Pizarro in New York, I mean, as we were just hearing there from Ellen, unemployment is a big issue. It was all about jobs, jobs and jobs. Do you think President Obama failed in not being aggressive enough in terms of conveying the message to the electorate?
Yes, I do. I think the only criticism I have of him is he didn't do a sufficiently good job of showing off and explaining what he has done. Vice President Biden has this this very accurate formula, which is Osama bin Laden is dead and General Motors is alive, and that I would say that's the bumper sticker summary of everything that President Obama has done, because we must put things back into context and remember that when he came to power, things were not good. And he has done a very good job of managing a very difficult situation. There's still a lot to do, but with him and with him re-elected today, we will be on a very good track for that.
Tim Kaine, one thing that struck the Romney campaign, or rather affected it, was a number of bloopers, notably his comments about a binder full of women. And especially given that this has been a fierce competition for the female vote. If you were looking back and scoring his performance as a presidential candidate, how would you rate it?
You know, I think he's done really well. You notice the Obama campaign stopped talking about the binder full of women, because even though it was inelegant, the content was good. And in fact, I think too many people saw those debates and talked about how Obama did terribly. My eyes saw Obama doing exactly how he normally performs without a teleprompter. He's not that eloquent. He's doesn't seem as bright or as sharp. Romney was the real story in the debates. He looked strong. And as I point out, sometimes he'll be inelegant, but his message was he cares about women. He may have binders full of women, but the point is he wanted to include them in his administration, and women responded very well to that. The Obama administration tried to make fun of it, or I should say campaign, but they stopped when they noticed that that gap in women voting was actually swinging heavily toward Romney after the supposed gaffe. So, no, I think he's looked very strong. I do think it comes back to the unemployment rate. And the notion that, I did a study recently, it's worse in every swing state. The unemployment rate's worse than when Obama came into office, worse than it was in BLS records. So that's really hard for him to overcome, especially when you consider those rates do not count people who've just given up.
But Tim,
real enthusiasm.
It is the case that an overall picture of unemployment has brightened in the last few months.
It's improved, but again, it improved even better in 1984. It improved, you know, which was The 1980s under Reagan had not only one severe recession that was in many ways scarier than this one. Interest rates were in double digits. People were terrified of inflation. There was a gas shortage. Reagan endured 2 recessions in his first term, but his recovery was based on tax rates that gave people more spending money. And he was re-elected with a massive, massive turnout and enthusiasm. I think he only lost the District of Columbia and Minnesota. It was the biggest swing ever. Obama has nothing to compare with that. His policies haven't worked. They haven't even measured up to what he said he promised would happen if America passed a stimulus bill. So I think the results are going to haunt him, even if he wins, which at this point I'm not predicting. Even if he wins, it will be a very lackluster win, and he won't have a mandate for his second term.
Bob, you're shaking your head furiously.
I disagree with so many things that my Republican colleagues have said tonight that I can barely even think about where to respond, but I'll limit myself to just 3 items. First, on these unemployment statistics, the overall picture has indeed improved. 7.9%, it went up from 7.8% a month ago because more people actually entered the economy and fewer people, a larger volume of people have jobs, so the calculus changed. And to sort of cherry pick statistics, the youth in this state are at 22%. That may be the case, but what kind of youth, what kind of jobs are they looking for?
Those are overall statistics that I gave you. Those aren't for states at all. Those are overall statistics.
The statistics are snapshots and generalizations. So the overall and
Bob,
the overall statistic is a snapshot.
I'm afraid we're going to have to just press the pause button because we need to go to a break.
Okay.
But do stay with us.
I'll disagree more later.
Do stay with us because you can hear what Bob is going to end up by saying. We'll be back after this short break.